Batman, YouTube sponsorships, congressional lobbying, and police brutality all have in common? More after this message. So if you've seen The Dark Knight, you might know that there is this quote from the film that became pretty popular after its release.
Fine. You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Today I want to address this concept. Specifically, how do people, especially well-meaning people, become villains? How does police violence become so entrenched? How do we get so-called representatives like Mitch McConnell? There's a lot of reasons, but today I want to focus on one that involves all of us. Let's get started. So one of the milestones of becoming a serious YouTuber is the ability to monetize your content. A lot of this takes the form of ads, but since these have become pretty unreliable lately, a lot of YouTubers have been turning to sponsorships as a way to help fund their channels. This in and of itself is not a bad thing. These things take forever to make, and I see nothing wrong with trying to get a little bit of compensation for the effort that you put in. And it's pretty easy to do. All you have to do is insert a plug, sometimes a little skit, in order to get some compensation for the literal hours that these things take to make. But how do you determine standards for who will be your sponsor? When you're an up-and-coming channel, any income is a huge boost. Each offer really has the potential to change the game for you. So if you're trying to grow your business or just pay a little rent, it really makes sense to latch on to the opportunity a partnership could provide. Honestly though, how many creators go through the effort of thoroughly vetting their sponsors, especially if they have multiple? Should they even have to? Shouldn't we just assume that a company that has enough cash to pay you to talk about them on the internet is a company that has their crap together? Nope! This became pretty evident in the scandal surrounding Betterhelp, a mental health app that promised to provide counseling services over the phone, text, etc. The YouTubers who were sponsored by Betterhelp received a special promotional link that they would put in their bios. If any member of their audience clicked on that link and used it to sign up, then that YouTuber would get a small kickback for the company. And then the complaints started coming in. People were saying that the service was unreliable, that they were getting terrible advice, some individuals weren't even getting responses, and overall, the feedback was that this company was being very unhelpful and somewhat even dangerous considering the audience that they were supposed to be serving, the mental health community. As it turns out, this little nugget was in their terms of service. The good news is many YouTubers, when they found out, either issued statements, ended their sponsorships, or at least tried to distance themselves from the company somewhat. The bad news is that Betterhelp is far from the only company on this platform whose tactics end up being a little shady, and they definitely won't be the last. Creators today face a really important question. Do I, as a creator on a public platform, have a responsibility to vet my sponsors? To what degree? And can I even afford to if I'm new, small, and pretty desperate? In 2015, San Diego resident Robert Cox launched the California is Not for Sale initiative, a ballot proposal that would have required state politicians to wear the logos of their top 10 campaign contributors anytime they were acting in an official capacity. Basically, NASCAR. The initiative never made it on the ballot. However, the installation they made on the steps of the state capitol is pretty interesting to look at. We all kind of know lobbyists aren't great. And even if you don't really have strong opinions, I'm sure you could see how the interests of a corporation and the interests of the people can often end up being at odds with each other. You could argue that congressional representatives have an obvious duty to the people. YouTubers, maybe not so much. But honestly, they face the same question. Who am I getting my funding from? And how much of my autonomy am I giving up in order to get where I want to be? If an earbud company like Raycon can tell a YouTuber they'll sponsor this content and not that content, you can bet that the United States Oil and Gas Association or the Koch brothers are pulling the same strings at the state and federal levels. This is how we get representatives like Mitch McConnell, who opposes healthcare reform and whose top campaign contributors include Kindred Healthcare, Humana, and Blue Cross Blue Shield. Even the politicians who really believe in what they're doing have to contend with this. In order to gain influence, even for good reasons, you need money. And the people with money have demands. How do you balance what you have to do to get ahead with what you want to do for the greater good? If you want to play the game, you're going to have to compromise. And compromise is a Crisco-covered slope.
Gotham needs heroes like you, elected officials, not a man who thinks he is above the law.
Exactly. Who appointed the Batman?
We did. All of us who stood by and let scum take control of our city.
But this is a...
It's time to talk about cops. Cops are a really good representative of social institutions in general. They are highly visible, high-pressure jobs that were initially created to support the public welfare and maintain social order. They've existed as a concept for a pretty long time. And they tend to attract some social do-good types, people who join because they want to make the world a better place, at least initially. This last point is important. Some of the pushback that I am seeing is this idea that cops want to help people. Not all police are corrupt. I will concede this point. The US is massive. Among the millions of communities and police officers in those communities, there have to be some precincts where things are going okay or individuals who are in it for the right reasons. The problem becomes when you start to blow this up and say that there's only a few bad apples, there's only a few racist individuals, it's just specific precincts. As a whole, cops aren't trying to be bad people, they're trying to do their jobs. To oversimplify the argument a little, okay, fine, there's bad cops, but they're the exception, they're the other. Most cops are good people, and sometimes they make the wrong call. Accidents happen, criminals gonna criminal. I'm gonna narrow my commentary on this to a very specific response. This is not what my entire response would be, but it is the most relevant to the points that we have already outlined so far. You remember what Harvey Dent said about Batman and how he got his authority to operate in Gotham?
All of us who stood by and let scum take control of our city.
Here's what I think. Bad things, terrible things even, can happen in a place full of good people. Because it's not about being good people or bad people. It's about the game. It's about balancing your survival in a cutthroat environment with the ideals that you started out with. I'll concede that for a lot of individuals who join the police force, it probably starts out as this well-intended thing. Maybe you have some dream of the way you wish things could be. Maybe you want to correct flaws that you noticed from the outside. But a rookie cop doesn't have any power. You learn pretty quick who the heavy hitters are and what you have to do if you plan to make it in your particular precinct. You learn what you can and can't say, what you should and shouldn't do, what you report or don't report, so that you get to the place that you want to be. Maybe some of those compromises really aren't a big deal, and maybe some of them are. If you're not careful, you become an unrecognizable version of yourself. A person who changed not overnight, but over time through lots of little choices that you made for good reasons. You've become the villain. This is not exclusive to cops. You can extrapolate this issue to any number of public institutions, education, healthcare, the church, even your corporate job. Just because you aren't a cop or don't know a cop or haven't had negative experiences with cops doesn't mean that the conversation we're having about cops isn't relevant to you. This conversation is relevant to anyone because this conversation is about us. The deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, among others, together with these videos of police brutality that we are seeing, are not unique circumstances in the lives of other people. People who are evil or good but made a mistake. These situations are not somehow exceptions to the human condition. These people, all of them, they're us. In so many circumstances of your own life, you could be George Floyd being crushed by an unjust system, but you could just as easily be the cop holding him down, or the officer making an example of him, telling the crowd, "Don't do drugs, kids." You could be the officer stopping people from intervening, or the police chief who chose to report this situation as "man dies after medical incident during police interaction." Yeah, there are people who just want to watch the world burn, people who don't care and have their own crazy agenda. But if you think that those are the only people capable of doing bad things, or the only ones who should be held accountable for them, you're wrong. The capacity for evil lies dormant in all of us and often manifests through a series of incremental choices: to accept a sponsorship, to pay back a favor, to use a little extra force, massage the truth, to stay silent as things happen around us. We don't often start on that road as bad people, but that doesn't mean we're innocent. I encourage you to pay attention to how people are responding to these deaths, and to pay attention to how people and precincts are responding to being told their actions may have been racist, violent, or wrong. If you feel like you're getting some of that feedback, pay attention to how you respond. Do you lash out? Do you listen? The sooner that we can accept our capacity for evil, the sooner I believe that we can work towards change. Maybe we can finally start to hear things about ourselves that might make us uncomfortable, even hearing that we might have been racist or sexist or selfish. And maybe that can empower us to start making different choices, fewer compromises. Maybe we can be empowered to speak out, because while we have within us the capacity for evil, we also have the capacity for good. And maybe now that all the skeletons are coming out of the closet, real good, real change has a chance to take root. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Try to learn something from someone this week, and really listen.